All right. Today I'll be talking about the discourse in Revelation 17, 18, and part of 19, if I can get to it. This is a new section, a segment, and it will be introducing us to what is called the harlot or Babylon. We saw Babylon the first time in chapter 14. It says in Revelation 14:8, and there followed another angel saying, Babylon is fallen, that great city, because she made all nations drink of the wine of the wrath of her fornication. We're not given much information in chapter 14, but it says that it has fallen. Babylon fallen, that city was just an announcement. But here in chapter 17, we begin and we notice that Babylon is unfallen again, and it will fall. So which indicates that this is not a chronological sequence event happening in chapter 17, which is behind 14. As we know that it started with chapter 6 of Revelation about the seals, then the trumpets, then the bowls or the vials that ended in end of chapter 16. We see in chapter 16:19, the end of that chapter, and that great city was divided into 3 parts, and the cities of the nations fell, and great Babylon came in remembrance before God to give unto her the cup of wine of the fierceness of his wrath. The city of nation fell. Now in 14:8, she made nations drink from her wine of fornications. In 17 and 18 is about Babylon fallen. And now we see that the harlot is drinking from the same cup of wine of fornication. So the question is, who is Babylon mentioned in this chapter or in these chapters? In the book of Revelation, we see the big picture of 2 cities. Mainly, in those 2 chapters, we have one spiritual Babylon, which is in chapter 17 and 18 and 19. Chapter 19 is a celebration or the lament over the rejoice over her fall. Number 2 is spiritual Jerusalem, which we learned in chapter 21 and 22. They're also referred to as cities and women. Now, the contrast we notice is Babylon is depicted as the harlot, but Jerusalem is seen as dressed bride adorned by her husband. Jerusalem is also a city coming out of heaven, as it says in chapter 22 of Revelation. So the contrast between the 2 cities also are symbolized by Babylon versus Jerusalem. And these are not literal cities. Neither are they both literal historical cities or kingdoms. They're just symbolic names. The contrast, again, is one is faithful and the other one is a harlot, an adulterer. The idea of Babylon here has always been tricky and generated many different ideas on what it is. Well, let's begin. Revelation 17:1, and I'll just read on. And there came one of the 7 angels which had the 7 vials, and talked with me, saying unto me, Come hither, I will show unto thee the judgment of the great whore that sitteth upon many waters, with whom the kings of the earth have committed fornication, and the inhabitants of the earth have been made drunk with the wine of her fornication. So he carried me away in the spirit into the wilderness, and I saw a woman sit upon a scarlet-colored beast, full of names of blasphemy, having 7 heads and 10 horns. And the woman was arrayed in purple and scarlet color, and decked with gold and precious stones and pearls, having a golden cup in her hand, full of abominations and filthiness of her fornications. And upon her forehead was a name written, Mystery Babylon the Great, the mother of harlots and the abominations of the earth. And I saw the woman drunken with the blood of the saints and with the blood of the martyrs of Jesus. And when I saw her, I wondered with great admiration. So here we see a woman sitting on a beast, drunk with the blood of the saints and the blood of the martyrs that followed Jesus. And the angel said to me in Revelation 17:7, Wherefore did thou marvel? I will tell thee the mystery of the woman and of the beast that carrieth her, which has the 7 heads and the 10 horns. The beast that thou sawest was, and is not, and shall ascend out of the bottomless pit, and go into perdition, and they shall dwell on the earth shall wonder, whose names were not written in the book of life from the foundation of the world, when they behold the beast that was, and is not, and yet it is. Confusing, isn't it? 17:9. This calls for a mind of wisdom, or with wisdom. The 7 heads are 7 mountains on which the woman is seated. They are also 7 kings, 5 of whom have fallen. One is, the other has not yet come. And when he does come, he must remain only a little while. 11. As for the beast that was and is not, it is an 8, but it belongs to the 7, and it goes to destruction. Well, that's pretty confusing. The 10 horns that you saw are 10 kings who have not yet received royal power, but they are to receive authority as kings for 1 hour together with the beast. 7 heads and 10 horns. 7 kings, 5 have fallen, and 1 is, and the other not yet come. Now, at verse 11, we see that the beast, that is the meaning, the 8th, is going to perdition. The ESV calls it destruction. 10 horns represent 10 kings. Revelation 17:13, these are of one mind, and they have over their power the authority to the beast. They hand over their power to and authority to the beast. They will make war on the Lamb, and the Lamb will conquer them, or he is Lord of lords and King of kings, and those with him are called the chosen and faithful. They make war on the Lamb, and the Lamb will conquer them. Remember that. In Revelation 18, we notice there's a lament over her falling, and we see that the 10 horns destroy her. Okay, so we'll continue reading. 15, and said unto me, the waters which thou sawest, where the horse sitteth, are peoples and multitude and nations and tongues. Alas, alas, for the great city that was clothed in fine linen, in purple scarlet, adorned with God, with jewels, and with pearls. For in a single hour all this wealth has been laid to waste. And the shipmasters and the seafaring men, sailors, and all whose trade is on the sea stood afar off. In the Old Testament, we see similar collage, if you say that, over fallen cities as Babylon, Tyre, Edom, Sodom. And the futurists don't understand such language, and that's why we see that in the Old Testament, they say it's a future event, because they don't pay attention to this collage of destruction of all these cities or kingdoms. They say it's, the Antichrist and the woman riding on him, meaning they think the beast is the Antichrist. And nowhere in Revelation does it mention Antichrist. Like we saw in chapter 13, it talks about the beast in more details. Not the Antichrist, the beast that's coming out of the sea, meaning a kingdom. They claim, the futurists, that this is about the apostate church. And of course, depending on how much they hate the Catholic Church, they say that this is the harlot. That's one view that they claim. They claim the unfaithful church is the harlot. That's a futurist view. Some futurists say that the harlot is the world system, but I can't understand why they assume that, since the definition of the harlot is far from that. A harlot means an adulteress, a woman that cheated on her husband. And pagan, they never had a husband like God. Let's see. The futurist view is pure speculation, because they claim that they don't know what this is about, so it must be in the future. And they can't figure out who the harlot is historically, so they assume it's coming in the future. And if we cannot show them who this harlot is, how can we win the argument? They've already won it. It's in the future. You can't argue with them. The idealist view say that it's the world system in summary. That's all I know about the idealist. The historist view, like the Seventh-day Adventist, say it's the Catholic Church. The preterist view hold the major part of Revelation is about Jerusalem fall in 70 AD, which I lean towards. Some preterist view say it's Rome, and they use Revelation 17:18, which says, "And the woman that you saw is the great city that has dominion over the kings of the earth." There's some credence to that, but we don't build doctrines on one verse. At least we shouldn't. Even though we agree that John's days were in Rome. Rome ruled over the earth. And I remember in 1812, it says, "The merchandise of gold, silver, and precious stones, and of pearls, and of fine linen, and purple, and silk, scarlet, and nine wood, and all manner of vessel of ivory, and the manner of vessel most precious wood, and brass, and iron, and marble, and cinnamon, and odor, and ointment, and frankincense, and wine, and oil, and fine flour, and wheat, beasts, and sheep, horses, and chariots, and slaves, souls of men." Fact is, the futurist view is untestable. We can't test it because it's in the future. It hasn't happened yet. So we can't argue with them unless we show them who the harlot is from the scripture. And that's what I'm going to do. It says in Revelation 18:20, "Rejoice over her, O heaven, and you saints, and apostles and prophets, for God has given judgment for you against her." So they say God is avenging the blood of the apostles. Apostles like Paul and Peter. They were killed in Rome. Okay, I can give them that. But even Peter said in 1 Peter 5:12, "By Silvanus, a faithful brother, as I regard him, I have written briefly to you, exhorting and declaring that this is the true grace of God. Stand firm in it. She who is Babylon," and he was in Rome, and he's calling her Babylon, "who is likewise chosen, sends you greetings. And so does Mark, my son." So was Peter sending this greeting from Rome when he spoke of Babylon? Maybe, but let's remember, Peter didn't write Revelation. John did. In Revelation 17:9, this calls for a mind with wisdom. The 7 heads are 7 mountains on which the woman is seated. So we're talking about the woman here is the harlot, not the 7 mountains. The woman sits on 7 mountains, which could be Rome. But who's the woman? Who's the harlot? You see? This woman is depicted as a city. Babylon is the harlot. Okay? Now, it may not be a bad case if they think that it's Rome or the apostate church, but is it the only contender? Is this the strongest evidence? Well, let us see. If I consider the book of Revelation is mainly about the fall of Jerusalem, in other words, the crux, the major part of the whole epistle or book of Revelation is about the fall of 70 AD, the fall of Jerusalem in 70 AD. And Rome had a big part as the plagues came from it. You see, God used the Roman army to destroy Jerusalem and the temple. So maybe we can look at that theory. Now, before I continue with my view or my understanding, let me share with you the view of certain preterists that came in the 16th century, right after the Jesuit order was formed to protect the papacy's office and his name. His name is Luis or D. Luis Alcaraz, and he claimed that the first half of Revelation was about Jerusalem, and the second half was about Rome, the empire, because he picked on some scripture that says, oh, Jerusalem persecuted the saints in the beginning. We know that the Sanhedrin killed Jesus, and they stoned Stephen, and they went after Paul when he became a Christian. And then the Roman Empire, in its early stages before Constantine, killed the saints. Well, my opinion is the harlot is Jerusalem, and I will show you how I came to that understanding. The theme in Revelation is about two women, faithful and another unfaithful. They are also referred to as two cities. And the two had a covenant with God. Those are key aspects of this whole study. One was faithful and one wasn't. Obviously, the bride is the faithful one, and in Revelation 21 and 22, refer to her as Jerusalem coming out of heaven. The unfaithful one and the one under judgment in this book is called the harlot. God himself called Jerusalem a harlot when she was unfaithful to him, and God did that a lot. In Isaiah 121, it says, how the faithful city has become a whore. She who was full of justice, righteousness lodged in her, but now murderers. Isaiah was talking about Jerusalem. Jerusalem, a woman who cheated on her husband, not a faithful wife. In Jeremiah 2:20, for long ago I broke your yoke and burst your bonds, but you said, I will not serve. Yes, on every high hill and under every green tree, you bowed down like a whore. He's talking about Jerusalem in Jeremiah, the weeping prophet. Jerusalem was with a covenant with God. And we see that she slept with other gods. This is how you played the harlot, God says about Jerusalem. The whole message of the prophet Hosea, as we know it, who was told to marry a harlot, Gomer. We don't know if she was a harlot or she became a harlot after she married. Nonetheless, she was. And after she married Hosea, she may have become a harlot or before, we're not told. Jerusalem was also called the harlot in Ezekiel 16, and Ezekiel 23 is completely devoted to the harlot topic. So I'll elaborate on Ezekiel 16 especially and 23 later on. Jerusalem is the unfaithful one, physical Jerusalem, not heavenly Jerusalem, is the one in the Old Testament. So I became to see the contrast between Jerusalem and the church. These are the two women that God made a covenant with. Now, the church, meaning Jews and Gentiles, become one, the body of Christ, anybody who believes in the Messiah. So Rome was never in a covenant with God. So how could they be called cheaters? Rome always worshipped other gods, so it didn't really matter in this context because they had no covenant with God. The Romans were pagans anyway. They never knew Yahweh, so they can't cheat on someone they never knew, and they cannot be called harlot. We keep hearing about this great city over and over as Babylon, and in Revelation 11:8, and their dead bodies will lie in the street of the great city that symbolically is called Sodom and Egypt, where their Lord was crucified. Where was Jesus crucified? Right outside the walls in Jerusalem. So the city was also called Sodom and Egypt, the great city, in this book, in the book of Revelation. So Babylon also repeatedly called a great city, as in Revelation 14:8, which we started with this, another angel, a second followed, saying, fallen, fallen is Babylon, the great city. She who made all nations drink from the wine of the passion of her sexual immorality, the ESV says. A term that was referred to Jerusalem as in Revelation 16:19, which I read to you earlier as well. The great city was split into 3 parts, and the cities of the nations fell, and God remembered Babylon the Great to make her drink the cup of the wine and the fury of his wrath. In Revelation 18:10, they will stand far off in fear of her torment and say, Alas, alas, you great city, you mighty city, Babylon, for in a single hour your judgment has come. A single hour. Alas, alas, in 18:16, for the great city that was clothed in fine linen, in purple and scarlet, adorned with gold and jewels and with pearls. In 18, and cried out as they saw the smoke of her burning. What city was like that great city? In 18:19, and they threw dust on their heads as they wept and mourned, crying out, Alas, alas, for the great city, where all who had ships at sea grew rich by her wealth, for in a single hour, again, a single hour, has been laid to waste. In 21, then a mighty angel took up a stone like a great millstone and threw it in the sea, saying, So will Babylon, the great city, be thrown down with violence and will be found no more. In the Olivet Discourse, we know that Jesus Christ prophesied the violence. He said, not one stone will be on top of another. Egypt and Babylon are examples of Exodus. So, just like the Jews escaped the wrath of Egypt when God took them out by the hand, Christians also escaped the wrath on Israel when Jesus told them what to do when they see the Roman army surrounding Jerusalem. Fell suddenly, by the way, just like Jerusalem. Rome didn't fall suddenly. It took about 100 to 150 years of the barbarian invasions to bring down Rome in 476 AD. But Jerusalem did fall suddenly. We see in verse 16, 17, and 19, it says 1 hour made desolate. It took really 5.5 months for Jerusalem to fall. Going back to scripture, Revelation 17:6, and I saw the woman drunk with the blood of the saints, the blood of the martyrs of Jesus, and I saw her, I marveled greatly. You see, you hear this blood of the saints. This is what we call the blood guilt. Let's elaborate on that. In Revelation 18:20, rejoice over her, O heaven, and you saints and apostles and prophets, for God has given judgment for you against her. So it's not that just 2 apostles, Paul and Peter. It's against the saints here, avenging the saints and the martyrs. That's where God's judgments come. See, we see that avenged as Jerusalem killed the prophets, as it's mentioned, including in the Old Testament. King Herod, for instance, killed James. He tried to kill Peter, but Peter escaped, etc. We know the Sanhedrin who brought Jesus to Pilate so he can get crucified. And then they stoned Stephen. In Revelation 18:24, and in her was found the blood of prophets and of saints and of all that were slain upon the earth. In Revelation 19:2, for true and righteous are his judgment, for he has judged the great whore, which did corrupt the earth, eretz in Hebrew, with her fornication, and has avenged the blood of his servants at her hand. See, because of the martyrs, judgment came upon them. And Jesus said, this generation. In Matthew 23, from 29 to 35, I'll just read real quick. Woe to you, scribes and Pharisees, hypocrites, for you build the tombs of the prophets and decorate the monuments of the righteous, and say, if we had been in the days of our fathers, we would not have been partakers with them in the blood of the prophets. Wherefore you be witnesses unto yourselves that you are the children of them that killed the prophets. That's what Jesus told them. Fill up the cup of measure of your fathers, you serpents, you generation of vipers. How can you escape the damnation of hell? Wherefore, behold, I send you prophets and wise men and scribes, and some of them you shall kill and crucify, and some of them you shall scourge in your synagogue, and persecute them from city to city, that upon you may come all the righteous blood shed upon the earth, from the blood of righteous Abel unto Zacharias, the son of Barachias, whom you slew between the temple and the altar. Verily I say unto you, all these things shall come to pass upon this generation. See, they claimed at the time of Jesus that their fathers killed the prophets. But look at us, we decorate their tombs. But Jesus declared in Luke 11:51, from the blood of Abel to the blood of Zacharias, who perished between the altar and the sanctuary, yes, I tell you, it will be required of this generation. Now, what does that remind you of? The blood guilt. This is in the Revelation passages, the blood guilt. Let's see another reference which talks about the kings of the earth, especially in Hebrew. This has been confusing to many. Kings of the earth. Kings of the earth, Eretz in Hebrew. In Revelation 17:18, and the woman which thou sawest is the great city which reigneth over the kings of the earth. Okay, let us search for the term kings of the earth. Lamentation 1:1, it says, how does the city sit solitary that was full of people? How is she become as a widow? She that was great among the nations and prince among the provinces, how she became tributary. In Matthew 2:6, and thou, Bethlehem, in the land of Judah, art not the least among the princes of Judah? For out of thee shall come a governor that shall rule my people Israel. You see the correlation? Prince, the king of Eretz, the land. So he's talking about the land, Jerusalem. If we go to Acts 4:26, it says, the kings of the earth set themselves, and the rulers were gathered together against the Lord and against his anointed. Who came against the Lord Jesus Christ and his anointed in the land, the kings of the earth? The Sanhedrin. For truly in the city, it's a city, they were gathered together against your holy servant Jesus, whom you anointed, both Herod, Pontius Pilate, along with the Gentiles and the peoples of Israel. That's who came against Jesus. Luke here referring to the Sanhedrin rulers of Israel for sure, because he wrote Acts. All this refers to Israel or Jerusalem in particular. Also in Revelation 1:5, since we are discussing Revelation, it says, and from Jesus Christ, who is the faithful witness and the first begotten of the dead and the prince of the kings of the earth. You see that? That's who the kings of the earth is in Jerusalem. Unto him that loves us and washed us from our sins in his blood. In Revelation 6:15, and the kings of the earth and the great men and the rich men and the chief captains and the mighty men, Pontius Pilate, and every bondman and every free man hid themselves in the dens and in the rocks of the mountains. That's what they did in 70 AD. They hid themselves. In Psalms 2, verse 2, it says, the king of the earth, Eretz, set themselves, and the rulers take counsel together against the Lord and against his anointed. That's Jesus Christ, saying, kings of the earth refers to as the rulers of the land. That's the Sanhedrin in collaboration with the Roman rulers that ruled over Jerusalem. Remember, Jerusalem was the capital. And Pontius Pilate was a governor there that was put by the empire, the Roman Empire. In Revelation 17:9, and here is the mind which has wisdom. The 7 heads are 7 mountains on which the woman sitteth. We're discussing the woman here, then not the mountains. 7 hills is the beast, not the woman. The woman sits on the beast. The harlot sits on the beast, this political or empire. So it is on the beast who has the 7 heads, not the woman. The beast is Rome or the Roman Empire. And at one point, Jerusalem was protected by Rome until they destroy her, which is in this text in Revelation that we read. We see that in the New Testament that Israel was more loyal to Rome than to Jesus the Messiah. Remember when they asked Pilate in John 19:15, he cried out, "Away with him." No. Don't let Barabbas out. Away with him. Crucify him. Pilate said to them, "Shall I crucify your king?" And the chief priest answered, "We have no king but Caesar." They were loyal to the Roman Empire more than the Messiah. So it's the woman who sits is the harlot on the beast, as we see in Revelation 13. That's the beast, the Roman Empire coming out of the water. It's a kingdom. In Revelation 14:1, then I looked, and behold, on Mount Zion stood the Lamb, and with him 144,000 who had his name and his father's name written on their forehead. Okay, these are the faithful remnant of Israel in the Old Testament. Prophets spoke of whom they escaped 70 AD. See, in the Olivet Discourse, the city that didn't escape was the unbelieving Jews named Babylon. They were wasted. But the Christians, the Jewish Christians, escaped. In Revelation 14:6, then I saw another angel, flying directly overhead, with an eternal gospel to proclaim to those who dwell on earth, to every nation and every tribe and language and people. And he said in 14:7, and he said with a loud voice, fear God and give him glory, because the hour of his judgment has come, and worship him who made heaven and earth, the sea of spring water. See the difference between God written on forehead instead of the beast? In Revelation 14:8, another angel, a second followed, saying, fallen, fallen is Babylon the Great, she who made all nations drink of her wine of passion of her sexual immorality. And another angel, a third, followed them, saying with a loud voice, if anyone worship the beast and its image and receive a mark on his forehead or his hand. 14:10, he also will drink the wine of God's wrath, poured full strength into the cup of his anger, and he will be tormented with fire, sulfur, and in the presence of the holy angels and in the presence of the Lamb. You see that? This is not hell, because hell is people that don't have the presence of Jesus Christ. This is about the fall of Jerusalem in the presence of the Lamb, because he was avenging the blood of the saints. There's the contrast between that is written on their forehead, the Father or the beast. That's how God judges. Okay, so let's go back to the 7 kings and the 7 emperors. 5 have fallen, and 1 is, and 1 to come. We had Julius Caesar, Augustus, Tiberius, Caligula, Claudius, and now, when John wrote this, Nero. That's when John was writing Revelation. In Revelation 17:10, it says, and there are 7 kings, 5 have fallen, and 1 is. Another is not yet come. And when he cometh, he must continue a short space or a short time. If you want to call it kingdom, we could refer to maybe kingdom of Egypt, Assyria, Babylon, Medo-Persia, Greek, and now Rome. It's kind of confusing. It doesn't say, that came, but when he comes must continue a short time. It could be referring to Galba, because Galba ruled for a very short time. He came afterwards, a short time, and maybe that eighth is the continuation of all the emperors. It's a bit confusing, but we just should gather enough evidence to understand who is this referring to. Galba ruled for 6 months, I believe. The eighth is like the seventh. Very confusing. Very confusing. What does that mean? Well, in Revelation 17:17, for God has put in their hearts to fulfill his will and to agree and give their kingdom unto the beast until the words of God shall be fulfilled. You see, it's God who ordains these leaders. But he doesn't ordain them to do evil, but to do good. But they do evil. The best example is how God hardened Pharaoh's heart. He was given so many warnings. He was already evil. So God hardened his heart. He was a reprobate. In Genesis 50:19, in the story of Joseph and his brothers, but Joseph said unto me, do not fear, for I am in the place of God. In 15:20, as for you, you meant evil against me. That's what Joseph told his brothers when they sold him into slavery. But God meant it good, to bring it about that many people should be kept alive as they are today. See, they intended evil, but God did good out of it. So when Pontius Pilate and the Sanhedrin crucified Jesus, that was God's plan anyway. They fulfilled it. Okay? God ordained it, but they should be blamed for it. It's not that they should go or remain blameless. These people had a sinful life already. In Revelation 17:16, and the 10 horns which thou sawest upon the beast, these shall hate the whore, and shall make her desolate and naked, and shall eat her flesh and burn it with fire. That's what happens to Jerusalem. It's the Roman Empire, the beast, that devoured her. She was riding on the beast. Now the beast devoured her. Okay, real quickly in chapter 18, this chapter is borrowing a lot from the Old Testament, like Jeremiah, Isaiah, and other books of lamentation. It's pretty boring because it's repetitious, but we see here rejoicing that this Babylon has fallen over the fall of great city Babylon. It's very similar language to the Old Testament and the fall of Babylon, Tyre, and Edom. I see the same language here in the fall of Jerusalem. We have similar references to the fall of Sodom and Tyre in Ezekiel, or Babylon in Isaiah and Jeremiah, and as the fall of Edom in Isaiah. So this chapter is likened to the fall of the old city in the Old Testament. I'll read quickly. In Revelation 18:1, and after these things I saw another angel come down from heaven, having great power, and the earth was lightened with his glory. Verse 2, and he cried mightily with strong voice, saying, Babylon the great is fallen, and is become the habitation of the devils, and the hold of every foul spirit, and cage of every unclean and hateful bird. All you have to do is read Flavius Josephus, The War on the Jews, and see what has become of them during the siege and the destruction. But let me refer you to Matthew 12:38-45. Let me read. Then some of these scribes and Pharisees answered him, saying, Teacher, we wish to see a sign from you. But he answered them, an evil and adulterous generation seeks for a sign, but no sign will be given except the sign of the prophet Jonah. For just as Jonah was in 3 days and 3 nights in the belly of the great fish, so will the Son of Man be 3 days and 3 nights in the heart of the earth. the men of Nineveh, will rise up at the judgment with this generation and condemn it, for they repented at the preaching of Jonah and beheld something greater than Jonah is here, talking about himself. 42, the queen of the south will rise up in judgment with this generation and condemn it, for she came from the ends of the earth here to hear the wisdom of Solomon, and behold, something greater than Solomon is here. When the unclean spirit, and here where it comes, when the unclean spirit has gone out of a person, it passes through waterless places, seeking rest, but finds none. Then it says, I will return to my house from which I came, and when it comes, it finds the house empty, swept, put in order. Then it goes and bring with it 7 other spirits, more evil than itself, and they enter and dwell there. And the last state of the person is worse than the first. So also will it be with this evil generation. That evil generation was possessed by demon kings of the earth, committed fornication with her. Josephus said in his book, Under the Siege of Jerusalem, how many were under demon possession. I remember reading when they entered the gate, they saw horrific things with the Jews, where women were eating other babies' women, and people were coming in to see it, looking for food or grain. And if they see somebody hoarding grain while they didn't share, they would burn it up and burn the people inside. There was just demonic presence in a way that's never seen before. Now, as I said in Ezekiel 16, the parable of, and read it for yourself, guys, it's time consuming to do it here. We see a parable of a baby girl abandoned at birth, but God takes her, keeps her alive, and brings her to grow. Then God marries her as his wife when she grows, and the wife goes and commits adultery with all other kings or other gods. That's the parable in Ezekiel 16. Example, Ezekiel 16:26. You also played the whore with the Egyptians, your lustful neighbors, multiplying your whoring to provoke me to anger. This is Ezekiel 16:28. You played the whore also with the Assyrians because you were not satisfied. Yes, you played the whore with them, and still you were not satisfied. Ezekiel 16:29. You multiplied your whoring also with the trading of land of Chaldea, and even with this you were not satisfied. Playing the harlot with all these other nations around them. Ezekiel 23 has a similar story, but mentions the 2 sisters, which is Israel and Judah, the northern kingdom and the southern kingdom, that were married to God and ended up what? Cheating on him. Ezekiel 23:12. She lusted over the Assyrians, governors, commanders, warriors, clothed in full armor, horsemen riding on horses, all of them desirable young men. Ezekiel 23:17. And the Babylonians came to her into the bed of love, and they defiled her and their whoring lust. And after she was defiled by them, she turned from them in disgust. 23:19. Yet she increased her whoring, remembering the days of her youth, when she played the whore in the land of Egypt. Pretty solid evidence in the Old Testament about Israel. Let's go back to Revelation 18:3. For all the nations have drunk of the wine of the wrath of her fornication, and the kings of the earth have committed fornication with her. And the merchants of the earth are waxed rich through the abundance of her delicacies, which is similar to Jeremiah 51:7. Babylon has been a golden cup in the Lord's hand that made all the earth drunken. The nations have drunken of her wine. Therefore the nations are mad. This is straight out of Jeremiah. Back to Revelation 18:4. Then I heard another voice from heaven saying, come out of her, my people, lest you take part of her sins, lest you share in her plagues. as in Isaiah 48:20. Go out from Babylon, flee from Chaldea, declare this with a shout of joy, proclaim it, send it out of the end of the earth, say the Lord has redeemed his servant Jacob. Come out of Babylon, because it's going to fall. It's the same theme. In Jeremiah 50, verse 8, flee from the midst of Babylon and go out of the land of the Chaldeans and be as male goats before the flock. In Jeremiah 51:6, flee from the midst of Babylon. Let everyone save his life. Be not cut off in her punishment, for this is the time of the Lord's vengeance, the repayment he is rendering her. Remember in Luke 21:20, but when you see Jerusalem surrounded by armies, then know that desolation is near. That was the warning that Jesus gave them in the Olivet Discourse. That's when you flee. And that's exactly what happened. Flee from where? From Jerusalem. He never told them to flee from Rome. You see? In Revelation 18:5, for her sins are heaped high as heaven, and God has remembered her iniquities as in Genesis 18:20. And the Lord said, because the cry of Sodom and Gomorrah is great, and because their sins is very grievous. Same language. Back to Revelation 18:6. Pay her back as she herself has paid back others, and repay her double. For her deeds mixed a double portion for her in the cup she mixed. In Psalms 137:8 says, O daughter of Babylon, who art to be destroyed, happy shall he be that rewardeth thee as thou hast served us. Back to Revelation 18:7. As she glorified herself and lived in luxury, so give her a like measure of torment and mourning, since in her heart says, I sit as a queen, I am no widow, and mourning I shall never see. In Isaiah 47:7, and now saidest, I shall be a lady forever, so that thou did not lay these things to my heart, neither did remember the latter end of it. In 47:8, therefore hear now this, thou that art given to pleasure dwellest clearly, that saith in their heart, I am none beside me, and I shall not sit as a widow, neither shall I know the loss of children. That's humiliation of Babylon. In Revelation 18:8, for this person her plague will come in a single day, death and mourning and famine, and she will be burnt up with fire, for mighty is the Lord God who judged her. Just like in Jeremiah 50:31, judgment on Babylon. In Revelation 18:9, and the kings of the earth who committed sexual immorality and lived in luxury with her will weep and wail over her, and when they see the smoke of her burning. Ezekiel 27:35, all inhabitants of the isles shall be astonished at thee, and their kings shall be sore afraid. They shall be troubled in their countenance. This is a lament over Tyre. Similar language. Just to cut the study short, we see in Revelation 18 from 11 to 13, if you read it, it's the merchant mourning, just like in Ezekiel 27 from 12 to 34. Read it for yourself. The merchant will weep, because Jerusalem was a prime city for a link between Africa and so forth and to the north. In 18:14 it says, and the fruits that thy soul lusted after are departed from thee, and all things which were dainty and goodly are departed from thee, thou shalt find them no more at all. Now we see and I'll end with this, in Matthew 21:19, when Jesus saw the fig tree and didn't produce fruit, he made it wither and it died the next day. So it's the same thing in Revelation 18:16. Alas, alas, the great city that was clothed in fine linen, and so forth. In Luke 21:5, and as some spake of the temple, how it was adorned with goodly stones and gifts, he said. Revelation 18:21, and a mighty angel took up a stone like a great millstone and cast it into the seas. Thus the violence shall be in that great city blown, Babylon be thrown down, just like the Olivet Discourse. In Revelation 18:22, and the voice of harpers, musicians, pipers, just like in Ezekiel. If you read Ezekiel 28 on the fall of Tyre, same exact language, almost verbatim. There's many examples in the Old Testament. It's just overwhelming, the information. So everything points to the fall of Jerusalem in 70 AD. And when you study the king of the earth, the Eretz, the merchant of the sea, the trader, the trading that was going on historically, like I said, Israel had a location where there's a way from Africa to general Asia and the surrounding area. So we see that Jerusalem has fallen and now it's desolate, and it hasn't been risen since then. Rome is revived and fine. So Jerusalem continues by man's tradition with Talmudic and Kabbalah's teaching. In Revelation 19, we see the marriage of the Lamb to the church. And this is my understanding on these chapters, who the harlot is. Okay, I hope this was a benefit to you. I know it's a lot of information, but just read the chapters on your own and see if that makes sense. So who the harlot is, really. All right, God bless. Thank you.